So Secretary Holt, you'll go second. Welcome, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If John Willems is here and wants to come up, I see he's signed up as a witness. I don't see, okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. And just a quick side note, because of the COVID restrictions and when I got to Annapolis, this is the first bill I've ever physically presented in the Senate, so never been on the side, so thank you. For the record, my name is Delegate Mike Griffith, and I'm here presenting House Bill 603, Harford County Board of Education Appointment of Members Alterations. And thank you, Chairman Pinsky and Vice Chairman Kagan and the members of the committee for giving me this opportunity. This bill slightly alters the how members of the Harford County Board of Education are appointed, removing the governor from the process and replacing with the county executive, and with a verification of 5 of 7 members of the county council to confirm that appointment. I'm grateful that this committee passed out the cross-file, not the cross-file, but the companion bill to mine, which was sponsored by the Harford County Senators, was passed out of this committee unanimously, as well as the Senate unanimously. And as any good delegate did, I conformed my bill to the Senate bill, and I humbly request a favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Senator Gallion, you've trained them well. Questions on this? Oh, this is a cross-file?
We amended ours to match. It was
Okay.
to match Senators.
Right. Okay. Questions? Seeing none. Mr. Willems, you want to add anything? Oh, you're unfavorable. I apologize. Any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, we'll go to the opposition. Mr. Willems.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Willems testifying today in opposition to House Bill 603. I'm often saying, as this committee knows, and I'm often in here saying things that sound pretty familiar based on MABE's position on unfunded mandates and local control, et cetera. We do not typically weigh in on local bills unless requested to by the local board, and I would say in this case, unless the bill violates a principle already adopted in MABE's legislative positions with regard to the composition and appointment authority related to local boards. And so MABE has a long-standing adopted legislative position in opposition to the conflict of interest inherent in county government officials appointing members of local boards. Aside from the exception of appointing members to fill vacancies, we opposed the restructuring bill back in the day related to the Prince George's County Board, which is being rectified this session for this reason, and shifting the appointment authority from the governor to the county executive with regard to 3 members of the Harford County Board raises the same concern. So with all due respect, and as late in the day as it is with regard to this legislation, we request an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Willems? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on that bill. Thank you. I'm sorry.
About that other issue.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just want to let you know I got a note from Senator Simon Ayer. He is alive and well in his office monitoring. He'll be down if we have a voting session. I just want the folks in the room to know that he is monitoring. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Ladies and gentlemen, those streaming, those in the audience, some of the chairs are not filled, and that's because of their hearings in the House, so people are doing business outside of this committee room, or they are participating from their office for whatever reason, possibly health, whatever. So just because the seat's not being utilized doesn't mean people are not engaged in the complex. Thank you, Senator. Okay, we're going to go to 1451. We have Secretary Holt presenting on behalf of Chairwoman McIntosh. This is 1451, Business Projects and Business Development Program Financial Assistance. Welcome, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, very much. Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Ken Holt, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, and as pointed out, Delegate McIntosh is tied up in conference, and she asked me to appear here on her behalf. This bill temporarily allows the Department of Housing and Community Development to accept convertible notes as a form of payment It is a pilot program that will sunset July 1st, 2026. The purpose of it really is to provide us with a little bit more capacity to assist small businesses across the state. We have a program called Neighborhood Business Works, which provides financing for small minority-owned businesses. The growth with our lending platform has been extraordinary over the last 8 years. And one of the tools that we lack is to be able to issue convertible notes. What a convertible note is fundamentally a debt instrument that provides interest. So there's interest that either accrues on a quarterly basis, or can it accrue over many years and be cumulative. So principal can be returned and interest returned after a fixed period of time. Also, a convertible note provides the opportunity to convert into an underlying equity. So if a company that the state is invested in appreciates in value, then the convertible note theoretically could convert into an appreciating underlying equity value and return greater profit to the state. We request a favorable recommendation by this committee. There are multiple efforts that we are making across the state in opportunity zones through the state small business credit initiative that the federal government is sponsoring. And we believe that the expansion of our Neighborhood Business Works and all of these other business-focused initiatives make it sensible that we be allowed to issue convertible notes. So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Questions, committee? In a lot of ways, it's codifying existing practice. So I don't know if it's important. I'm not sure how much new ground we're breaking. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Secretary, for presenting the bill today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That completes the bill hearing on 1451. Delegate Morgan, St. Mary's County.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and committee. I'll be very, very brief, I promise. We're due on the floor in about 7 minutes. But I got a very simple delegation bill in front of you, HB 516. It deals with our Human Relations Commission in St. Mary's County. Basically, we're changing their mission statement, and we're changing their responsibilities to include equal treatment, and changing that definition to what matches federal law. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the delegate? Yes, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Delegate Morgan, for this bill. So which federal law, is that a new federal law that require these changes? And can you tell us what federal law that is? Thank you.
I have no idea what the actual federal law is, but the legislation in front of you on page 2 basically adds the word sexual orientation, gender identity, in accordance with federal, state, and local laws and regulations related to discrimination in housing, education, employment, and public accommodations. So we're basically adding sexual orientation and gender identity, and then removing the word compliance and changing that to an ordinance, and then adding education as well as the areas that you shouldn't be discriminating against.
Yeah, okay. So in your testimony, you said these changes are basically keeping up with requirements in federal law.
Yes,
So
sir.
I know I'm probably putting you on the spot with that. So could you reach back to me to let me know
Which federal law it
what
is?
federal law this bill
Okay.
is lining up with?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so-
Because I think that's a pretty protected classes within Maryland fall under, if you read the legislations in section 2 of the back page with regard to race, color, religion, ancestral, natural origin, sex, sexual orientation is what we're adding, gender identity is what we're adding, age, marital status, or physical or mental disability. I believe that's consistent with, I think it's federal fair housing, federal discrimination, employment as well.
Great. All right. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to see Section 2, but you omitted that on line 7, you're removing the word racial. The commission was set up, and it says, "The commission shall use its influence and persuasion to direct the efforts of community to solving problems that many times are the basic reasons for racial tension," and you're just changing it to tensions within the community. Is that required by federal law?
I don't believe that's required by federal law,
Right, and,
but that's the goal of the commission, to reduce tensions. That's the whole reason why we have a Human
Right.
Relations Commission.
right, so you don't want to reduce racial tensions that are?
Well, wouldn't racial tensions fall inside reducing tensions within the community? I think that's a more broader statement that takes in
Well,
more
yeah.
inclusiveness.
Yeah, actually, I can amend it to, consistent with your second part, which is really, I really appreciate you adding gender identity and sexual orientation. And I do also believe that to remove compliance when the commissions are a compliance entity would be removing the actual goal of these commissions. So I think that that's not appropriate. But I think perhaps to get broader would be to, take lines 10 and 11 and add all of the reasons that are covered under federal law that contribute to tensions. So, rather than just removing the one, I could see putting that. But there are numbers, unfortunately, I know it's a local bill, but there are a number of, problems with the way the bill is drafted. So you could try
okay.
again next year.
All right, well, if you want to amend it,
Thank you.
feel free to amend it. If you want to vote
Thank
it
you.
down, free to vote it down.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, I think we'd probably end up getting just completely rid of the commission, because obviously we can't do the local scope and work that we want to do with it. So maybe it should just be disbanded at this point.
Well, I would love, if you did that, that would be a very interesting thing to remove the human rights.
Well, I mean, I tell
the
you,
Human
well,
Relations Commission
so on one hand, the
is
committee's
telling-
telling me that, this is the second year we brought a local bill in, trying to be more inclusive, and you're telling us we can't do that.
No.
At the same token, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a commission where we obviously, it can't, you're setting up an impossible barrier.
What's I'm trying to understand it, because this is the second time I've seen the bill, and I appreciate.
But
you
I
including it,
revised
I
the
don't-
bill to match federal
I
law.
just don't, I don't
wait,
understand.
wait.
She's done.
Well, see, this is, clearly, there are tensions, and since I'm a part of at least 3 or 4 of the groups upon which there are tensions, I think that we, at least coming from you, I'm getting that there's some tension.
There's no tension at all. The
But
only tension
I-
is this committee, it seems
Right.
like, with this bill.
As delegate, I think we ought to take a breath here. There's a bill, and I think we want to maintain respect and decorum here.
Absolutely.
And we want to practice what is
Absolutely.
implied in this bill.
Absolutely. I just want to, what I'm saying is that, and you can feel free to do it, but I'm alerting you that Human Relations Commissions do have a compliance charge. So to take compliance out of its mission is problematic.
So,
And then to remove racial tensions when, great, things have evolved. And so I think the source of the tensions are important to be articulated in the law. So that's my only observation, but
Okay.
if you don't want to take it, that's fine.
well,
Thank
I'd
you.
like to,
Oh, whoa, slow down.
I'd like to address her question.
When I call on you, you will have that opportunity. What the senator said a few moments ago, in response to you saying it should be broader than just racial, she actually mentioned or floated using the language in the next paragraph, 10 and 11, which dealt with other types of discrimination or potential discrimination as a possible remedy to that situation, which might get to yes in terms of being broader than just racial. For whatever reason, the local commission thinks that's too narrow. So obviously, it's in our hands. We will do what we think is appropriate. And yes, it came up before, but I think we should hold off on the glibness and a critique of this committee. So
Yep,
with that understanding, you may now respond.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that response. We'll do whatever the will of the committee wants to do. So if you want to amend the bill, I'm fine with this. This bill came in from the Human Relations Board. So this is the second year we're bringing forward a pretty mundane, small change to the bill, trying to be more inclusive here. I mean, this isn't a bill that I thought up or even the delegation. It started and originated with the committee. It went through our county process of the commissioners weighing in on it, and it has delegation support. So, but if the committee wants to make changes, they think there's going to be more broader and more inclusive, we would be open to that. So thank you.
We understand, Delegate, and just so you understand, we understand you're the messenger. Well-intended people, and I don't know who's on the Human Rights Commission in your county or any of the other counties. Sometimes they've got great ideas, sometimes they could be a little short-sighted. So we're not passing judgments yet. When we address the bill, we may pass judgments then, but we appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, always fun. Thank you all.
Delegate McKay, you have two bills.
I do, Mr. Chair.
You've got 528 and 543, and I believe you're the only witness, whichever you choose to take up
Okay,
first.
I'll do, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, I am Delegate Mike McKay here to present House Bill 543, Town of Hancock Urban Renewal Authority. In Washington County, there's already 6 municipalities, towns that have this ability, and there's approximately over 35 within the state of Maryland that has it. The town is looking to address commercial blight, and we're just trying to re-energize our downtown and look for a favorable report.
Uh, 543, discussion, questions for the good delegate. Proceed, let's go to 528.
The beauty of 528 is the only difference is the town of Hancock compared to the town of Williamsport, the exact same testimony. Looking for a favorable report. Be willing to answer any questions you all may have.
Questions on 528? Seeing none, thank you for your patience,
Thank
Delegate.
you. Have an
I know you've
awesome
got
and
to get to
wonderful
the floor. Delegate Lasante, 612, deaf and hard of hearing responsibilities and reporting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. It's my pleasure to bring to you, on behalf of the 1.2 million Marylanders that are deaf and hard of hearing. The Governor's Office of Deafness and Hard of Hearing has done a great job, but it's time to modernize the office and give them a little bit broader scope of responsibilities and reporting back to the legislature. As we know through COVID, there were many deaf and hard of hearing people that struggled with technology, particularly in school systems, with their cell phones and getting vital communication. This allows the office to be that one-stop shop for people that are deaf or hard of hearing that they can go to and get their get services and access to some of the things that they need. The bill has no fiscal impact. It has no opposition. There's plenty of support, including the Maryland Developmental Disabled Council. It passed HGO and the full House unanimously. So I ask for a favorable report on this very important bill for these Marylanders.
Questions for the delegate? Seeing none, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Amprey, be followed by Delegate Young.
Is it possible I can use it or not?
I'm sorry, Delegate.
I brought a map. Is it possible I can use this?
Sure. We like show and tell.
All right, it's a pleasure to be amongst you. Chair Pinsky and members of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee, thank you so much for your time today. Today I will be presenting on House Bill 179. It's being introduced for the purpose of establishing the work group on food environments to determine and make recommendations to the General Assembly by November 30th, 2022 regarding the most, I'm sorry?
Delegate Ampry,
Yes.
there's no time limit, there's
Oh,
no clock.
no,
You
I
can take a breath.
No, I
And you
understand.
also should introduce yourself, and we're very happy that you're here.
No, I'm trying to, we're
I know
on
you
the
need to be
floor.
on the-
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
sorry.
Still,
Trying to be as
we
quick as
wanna
possible.
understand
But
you and
yeah,
follow
no,
along.
I understand. So, for the record, Delegate Ampry, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm presenting on House Bill 179. It's being introduced to establish a work group to address the lack of fresh food opportunities for Marylanders across the state. Originally, this bill was supposed to be an actual plan to institute maps like these that would be available across the entire state, where we could actually map and see where are our food deserts, where are places where food is very accessible, where is food not accessible. I have a strong belief that you cannot fix what you cannot measure. Currently, yes. I'll tell you. Currently, we don't have a state metric in order to fully understand where our food deserts are and where they are not. What you have here is an example map of what I would like to see eventually take place across the state of Maryland. And what you see here is actually District 40. And the unfortunate reality is in my district is one of the places with the most food deserts in the city of Baltimore. More than 62% of individuals in Baltimore City live in a food desert who live below certain income levels. And the same goes for Baltimore County. The unfortunate reality is that this is the reality for many people of color, many people who live in low-income areas, whether it's in Baltimore City, Prince George's County, Western Maryland, the Eastern Shore. I remember a few months back or a few weeks back, I would go on social media and I would see individuals who lived in more wealthy areas that were used to having fresh food. There was, delays in transportation across our state. And people were struggling to find fresh food, find fresh meat, and I saw many friends complain like, "Man, I can't find there's no meat here, there's no milk here, there's no fruit here, there's no eggs here." Well, that's the reality for people across Maryland every day, and we have to address it. And I think the best way we can address it is figuring out a way that we can map and measure where these food deserts and food environments are, where we can determine the best pathways in order to create better realities for people who live in our great state. So the work group would have the task of determining how to make it as fiscally responsible as possible to determine how we can create these maps. Previously, the fiscal note was pretty high. I think there's been some misconceptions on what will be needed in order to actually create these maps. A lot of the data, it can be found at the county or city levels, and it's a matter of a lot of shared data going back and forth. That's why we put together this work group, which is full of various groups, which I won't list in name, but you have it in front of you, that will help us determine where is it going to be the largest push financially and where we can possibly make it more affordable to make these maps happen. I think that in order for us to really address the lack of fresh food across the state, we've got to have a better sense of where these food deserts actually are and how we can properly address them. I've sat in on other committee hearings, and I've heard people who've been against certain policies and ideas to get fresh food into neighborhoods. Their biggest pushback was, well, how do we know this is really a food desert? Do we really know this? I mean, there's a 7-Eleven there, they sell bananas, and this map breaks down exactly where we have corner stores versus grocery stores. We know that corner stores don't always take some of the public assistance that many families need in order to buy fresh food. We know supermarkets do. You look here, this part of the map, I know it's far away, but the part of the map where my family's from, 21216, 21217, is one of the highest areas of lack of fresh food. When I was a kid, I could walk to 3 different grocery stores from my grandparents' home to help my grandmother finish up Sunday dinner. Today, there's nowhere in walking distance from there. So it's an issue that we have to address. And I ask for a favorable report on this bill and look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Senator Freihester, followed by the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate, I really think this is an incredibly important idea. I'm just curious if you were aware that last year we created the Food System Resiliency Council?
Right. Yeah.
And I think that there's substantial overlap between your bill and that council, and the council, I think, has been funded, to work this year. So I'm just curious if you would be willing to have a conversation about maybe instead of creating a whole new work group, asking this existing work group to double down. And their interim report is on MDEM, the Maryland Department of Emergency Management's website, and there's a whole thing about mapping generally, and then there's a subgroup on mapping food deserts.
Right.
So I don't know, I think, I'd be happy to talk with you offline, but I think maybe you could probably get this done, like this interim, if you wanted to.
If we could make it happen sooner, that'd be great. But my understanding, I know about what we all passed last year, and I was so excited to see that. But my understanding was that it was more of a understanding of the actual food source mapping from start to finish. And I guess I have to dig more into the details there. But I'm happy to talk offline about it. That's something I'm very interested in. I'm all about making things as easy and economical as possible. So I definitely would love to chat with you later on that.
Madam Vice Chair.
Welcome, Delegate Ampry. It's good to have you in EHE. So notwithstanding the really important point that Senator Hester just made, I do note that the work group you're proposing would be reporting this year, November 30th, 2022, so it's not a multi-year thing.
Right.
You and I, Doe, discussed the possible composition, and I wonder whether you've given any thought to my suggestions on two possible members. One, and that's if this bill moves and if it's not already covered, one being the Maryland Municipal League, since you have two members from MACO, the Maryland Association of Counties. I think our cities also should be part of the conversation. And then Maryland Hunger Solutions, which is a statewide advocacy and nonprofit organization. And I just wondered if you'd had any thoughts about that. And if you don't have an answer, you can circle back to me in the committee if we're moving the bill.
Right, yeah, so I thank you for that. I spoke with MML. They expressed interest in the bill, but there wasn't any direct interest in joining the work group.
Okay.
I think MACO, because there's a lot of overlap between what counties and cities already have, Baltimore City, there may be a lot of overlap with the information that ultimately would be needed in order to draw out these maps.
Okay. And Maryland Hunger Solutions?
I haven't had an opportunity to reach out to them, but I would love to talk with you about that offline for sure.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Humphrey, thank you for this bill. And so I'm just intrigued by your map, and it seems pretty detailed.
Yeah.
So like the green areas, what is that
the
signify particular,
So
or is
green,
this the park?
the green areas are just parks. The
Okay.
primary thing you want to look at in the map are actually the dots. So the dots display where there is food being sold. The yellow dots display where it's actually a grocery store, where it's a guarantee that there's fresh food there. The pink dots display corner stores. So a lot of our corner stores, they do sell food, so you can't say they don't. It's not truly, there's food there, but there's not necessarily fresh food, and a lot of the corner stores don't necessarily take public assistance in order to pay for the food.
Okay,
So-
great, thanks for that. So I can't see the dots here, so.
Right.
Can you send that
Yeah,
to us through an email?
Yep, I plan to
Or
send
leave
everyone.
your big chart over here so we can look at it afterwards? Whichever.
I will
but-
leave this as a
yeah.
gift. It's you all can take it.
Sure, sure.
I come with gifts today, so you can take it, but I definitely will also email them out.
I appreciate that, thanks.
Delegate, I do have one question. Clearly, the first two pages or page and a half were removed. And so as the operative sentence on page 4, it says, figure out a way to produce a food environment report. And that's basically the operative language. And in terms of giving direction for this report, it gets back to a thing you referenced earlier. There are supermarkets and there are also bodegas.
Right.
And it's unclear to me if this group were to meet, if this bill were to pass and this group were to meet, what direction are we giving them as to how they define a food environment report? I mean, you can have a bodega or two, it's still a food desert in my book.
Yeah, mine too.
Because there's so little food and the cost is probably a little higher. So I guess I'm a little concerned that it's so general now, it doesn't give direction to this work group. I know some work's been done in my county, Prince George's County. We know some areas that are food deserts.
Right.
That came about because of other legislation. So I'm just trying to understand if it really has the direction you would like in what's left of the bill.
Yeah, well, I think ultimately thank you for the question. The the work group will be tasked with the goal of creating a map that's close to this. And so one of the members of the work group is the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. And they actually are the body that created the maps that you have here in front of you. So I think that their metrics and the way they compile data will, hopefully, I'm hoping that as a member of the work group, there'll be a body of interest that is ensuring that, like you're saying, that we don't have 7-Elevens constitute a fresh food source. Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll let you get to the floor of the House.
All right. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being with you all
Right.
today.
Vote early and often. Okay, let's go to bringing back Delegate Young, who's making a regular occurrence of visiting EHE. This is LGBTQ Veterans Honorable Discharge, 1380. Delegate.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Restoration of Honor Act, for the record, I'm Delegate Pat Young, and I just would like to say to the Vice Chair, I appreciated the farewell the first time I came. Didn't realize I was coming back 5 more times, but always good to be in front of you. Yeah. So the Restoration of Honor Act, essentially, and well, specifically, the bill with respect to any state program or benefit that's offered to veterans in the state would be applicable to veterans and defines a veteran as eligible if they were discharged or the discharge status is other than honorable or dishonorable, just for the state of Maryland. So right now, in terms of Maryland, we identify a vet as someone who served on active duty and has a discharge that is something other than dishonorable. For this purpose and for this bill, the state VA would adopt regulations and procedures related to identifying those who have a discharge that is other than honorable or dishonorable if that discharge was related to, one, sexual orientation or gender identity of the individual that was discharged, or based on a statement or consensual act of the individual being discharged related to that individual's sexual orientation and gender identity, if that statement was a consensual act and was prohibited by the military or naval service at the time of discharge. So essentially, if you were discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Maryland will accept and offer all benefits to you as any other veteran, even if your discharge has not been upgraded through the DOD. This is what we call it the Restoration of Honor Act, because this is a bill that's been passed in New York, and it's a piece of legislation that's going around other states. There's no fiscal note, and the state VA can operate and also implement with current resources. So that, happy to answer any questions and urge a favorable report.
Followed by a very brief Senator Ellis.
Super brief. I just want to note for the record and for anyone watching at home that the list of sponsors is bipartisan. And when it comes sometimes to civil rights and LGBTQ plus rights, that isn't always the case. And so I'm glad when it comes to supporting our veterans that Democrats and Republicans decided to sponsor this bill. So thank you for your leadership, and kudos to the Republicans who joined on this bill, and it passed virtually unanimous in the House and in committee. So thank you, Delegate Young.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Delegate Young, for this bill. You know, this is a major area of inequity in our armed forces, so thank you for this. So what kind of impact would the state have with the benefits? Because, I mean, the determinant level is the federal government. So say, for instance, a veteran injured in the line of duty and somehow got discharged on a less than honorable because of these issues in regards to sexual orientation. What benefit could the state, if you have an example, if you don't, it's fine, but can the state have a different impact than the intent of the military and the Department of Veteran Affairs to deny all benefits?
Sure. And thank you for the question. I think that, and this has come up before too, the state of Maryland and the state VA, their services that we provide are inclusive. So I'd say that, and I wouldn't have an example of any time that the VA has denied a benefit to anyone, or gone through and checked somebody's status before providing a benefit. But in statute, in terms of what we define as a vet who's eligible for service, we have this line that's related to honorable discharge, which is understandable. If there was a concern about a benefit that might be, or technically could be denied, would be, and I could be corrected later, and I'm open to any correction, but services related to being buried in a VA cemetery in Maryland, potentially being eligible for being admitted into Charlotte Hall, potentially, and I don't want to say that that's happened, I'm just saying, but if it's based on what we define as a veteran in the state, right now, in current statute, if you were discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and your discharge status was dishonorable, you wouldn't be necessarily eligible or potentially could be denied that benefit. So, and we're leaving it up to the VA too to make sure that if there are any benefits that we're currently providing that somebody may not be eligible for, that we're defining it and making sure there's a process to identify under these circumstances and parameters how they can be eligible for those benefits. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. And those are two big ones. Charlotte Hall is home for veterans, disabled, elderly, and of course, we have state cemeteries, state veteran cemeteries, and so we would have autonomy in that also, in how we treat these veterans.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And to be clear, too, for the record, that I'm not saying that I believe the VA or state VA has denied anybody any benefits, but potentially based on the law and what we define as a vet for the state, you could check and see that under these circumstances, somebody might have a dishonorable discharge and could potentially be denied a benefit. But I'm aware of no instance in which the VA has denied a benefit that they offer to any veteran.
Thank you.
A good bill, Delegate, and it's more the logistical process. I've seen my dad, I've never been in the military, I saw my dad's discharge and it said honorable. The same form would be used for a dishonorable discharge, and are you saying that underneath that they would delineate breaking of the law or sexual orientation or anything of that nature, or is it just dishonorable discharge?
So and I see what you're saying too, and I'll be clear that this doesn't change any official documents that came through the DOD or through the federal government through someone's service.
So would the veteran self-identify the problem?
They would, in the scenario that we've used before and that other states have used too, where a vet might, if a vet was discharged because of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and
Right.
one of these acts taken, then they would have a dishonorable discharge on their record.
Right.
What would also be there would be whether it was a court martial or whether it was other documentation through the DOD that outlined the process of discharge that would include that if it was just a investigation into conduct which was related to sexual orientation, if there was other things in there, like there was a felony act, or there was something like that would be, and that's part of what the VA would then be setting in place, what their process is to identify that it is someone who was just discharged and identified as dishonorable or unhonorable just because of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just one question, Delegate. Do you by chance know how many people, how many Marylanders who were discharged for either of those two cases under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or the two categories have been dishonorably discharged,
And
roughly?
I appreciate the question, and I do not. And with a caveat to that, years ago, in my first term, working with the military department, trying to find out how many folks were identified so that we could assist in potentially putting a bill in to get them through the DOD's process to change their discharge. And unfortunately, the military department did not have a clear way, and this is not a criticism, they just didn't have a clear way of identifying, since Don't Ask, Don't Tell was started to when it ended, identifying who was discharged just for that purpose. So I don't have a number. And in a larger sense, and I know this was part of your question, this idea of going state by state and enacting these restoration of honor acts is the psychological piece of you've served, you did your time, and the reason that you were discharged is under a policy that does no longer exist, which then psychologically prevents you from even trying to attempt to get a federal benefit. And we want folks to know that in Maryland, that doesn't matter as much as the fact that we know that you served honorably, and now that that policy is no longer here, that you should be free and not feel that there is a wall to us recognizing your service and getting a benefit for it. Thank you.
Joining us. We'll let you go to the House floor.
Thank you.
We have two more to go. Howard County Delegation, Abby Rubling, the Department of Housing Community Development, Housing Opportunities Trust Fund. She's joined by Jackie Eng and Megan Lynch and Maureen Evans Arthur. She's unfavorable. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Abby Rubling. I'm the Howard County Delegation Administrator here to present House Bill 878. In 2019, the Howard County Executive appointed a Housing Opportunities Master Plan Task Force charged with studying existing housing challenges and recommending meaningful solutions to address those challenges. The resulting Housing Opportunities Master Plan, which was issued almost a year ago, included as one of its recommendations the creation of a Housing Opportunities Trust Fund. House Bill 878 allows for the implementation of that recommendation by creating the Housing Opportunities Trust Fund as a non-reverting special fund to promote equitable access to affordable housing for households of limited income in Howard County. The Howard County delegation held a public hearing on this legislation last November and heard strong support not only from the administration and from housing advocates, but also from our Chamber of Commerce, recognizing that access to affordable housing is a critical workforce issue for Howard County employers. The only argument that we heard in opposition to the bill was a concern raised about a potential violation of Howard County's home rule. After hearing that testimony, Delegate Feldmark, who originally brought the legislation to the Howard County delegation, reached out to the Attorney General's office to make sure that we had not inadvertently created a legal problem, and she received advice that this legislation would not violate Howard County's home rule. She's shared a copy of Sandy Brantley's letter on this topic with the committee, and it should be available for you to view in your bill file. We have not heard any other opposition to this legislation. You should also have a copy of the delegation's letter of support. It's House and Senate as well. There's a vote sheet attached. And also, the bill passed the House of Delegates almost unanimously with a vote of 131 to 1. We have a great sponsor panel who will offer additional details, so I will limit my remarks here. And on behalf of the Howard County delegation, I would like to ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Kelly Simoneau from the Howard County Department of Housing and Community Development. On behalf of our Howard County Executive, Calvin Ball, and the administration, I am testifying in support of House Bill 878, which would establish a Housing Opportunities Trust Fund. As Abby mentioned, we completed the Housing Opportunities Master Plan last year, and it did recommend that we create a Housing Opportunities Trust Fund. This trust fund would be an important tool to address the critical housing infrastructure needs facing our county. The fund would be administered by my department, the Department of Housing and Community Development, to promote and support equitable, geographically dispersed, and affordable rental and for sale housing opportunities throughout the county. This fund would assist in alleviating the difficulties of many low and moderate income households to obtain and maintain housing that meets their needs at costs they can afford, and to address these needs by providing funding for rental housing development, preservation, rehabilitation, rental assistance, home improvements, home ownership, and other affordable housing opportunities. The Department of Housing would also provide an annual report of revenue and expenditures to the County Council as referenced in the bill. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair Pinsky, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. My name is Maureen Evans Arthurs, and I'm here on behalf of Howard County Executive Calvin Ball. Oh, yep. I'm here on behalf of County Executive Calvin Ball in support of HB 878, which would establish the Housing Opportunities Trust Fund. Last year, the county did in fact initiate and completed the Housing Opportunities Master Plan, which highlighted the need for diversified and equitable housing and this very concept. For the sake of brevity, I'm just going to emphasize the county executive's emphatic support for this legislation and also thank Delegate Feldmark for introducing this and the Howard County delegation for subsequently passing this bill, including two of our delegation members who are here on this committee, Senator Katie Fry-Hester and Senator Clarence Lamb. With that, I will go ahead and pass it off to Jackie Eng.
Good afternoon. Chair Pinsky, Vice Chair Kagan, and committee members. My name is Jackie Yang, and it's a privilege to testify today on behalf of the Howard County Housing Affordability Coalition. The coalition is comprised of 70 individuals and nonprofit organizations that advocate within our county to increase the availability of housing that's affordable and accessible to households with limited and or fixed incomes. The coalition strongly supports HB 878. The $121,000 median income, the $2,300 average two-bedroom rent, and the $509,000 resale price of a home present extraordinary barriers to too many of our Howard County communities' households. There are 9,000 low-income renter households, but only 2,600 affordable rental units. Among low-income seniors, there are 4,500 eligible households, but only 1,000 affordable units. We have 120 residents with disabilities who are currently on the state's 811 waiting list. 1 in 4 of our county renters are severely cost-burdened, paying more than 50% of their gross income on housing. This is an increase of 33% since 2010. Housing trust funds have been used successfully in other jurisdictions across the country and in other Maryland jurisdictions to support clear action plans that facilitate an affordable housing vision and long-term strategies. Importantly, a non-reverting housing trust fund will provide a vehicle enabling diversified, including private funding that can augment county contributions to ensure that the fund is sustainable over the long term. For Howard County's current and future low and moderate income renters, we urge the committee to issue a favorable report for HB 878. Thank you very much.
Questions for the panel? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because the proponents go first and can't respond to opponents' testimony, and we're about to hear from Councilmember Young, I'm going to ask Ms. Evans-Arthurs to, so one of the things that's in Councilmember Young's testimony is that 3 of the 5 council members, including her, stated publicly that we would not fund it, outlined my reasons, and we're going to hear her reasons and stuff. Is there anything you want to speak to? I just want to make sure that we fully understand what the issues are before, as we hear from you and then from the council member.
Well, I think Councilmember Young will expand on that. However, we in fact did receive information, I believe from our Office of Law, that did in fact state that this is something that the state legislature could in fact do. In terms of funding, I think that is also going to be a question that Councilmember Young will be able to answer. We hope that we can move forward with their support, knowing that we do have 2 other council members, but did you want to add anything, Director Zimino?
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let me ask I'm sorry, Senator Ella. Does the county have any policy for new construction that there are some set-asides for low and moderate income, which would obviate the need for underwriting the cost through this kind of fund? So I'm trying to understand if this is filling such a gap or you're proceeding in multiple paths.
I will take that if that's okay. We are proceeding in multiple paths. We do have a inclusionary zoning program in Howard County, the Moderate Income Housing Unit Program, that requires that 10 to 15% of new housing units in specific zoning districts are set aside for affordable units. But this would be in addition to that.
And you said somewhere between 10 and 15?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Senator Ellis?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you for this bill. This area definitely needs attention. So I'm looking at the fiscal note here, and there's no money will flow from the state, but it says the county expenditures will increase, but then I'm hearing that the county will not put money in this. So there's a little disconnect I'm not following closely. So is it private groups out there that will fund this?
Senator, I think
So the county
this
executive.
bill is setting the policy in place. The funding is a separate issue, which will be battled out with the county executive and the county council. So I think they want to have something on the books. So if the funding is achieved, apparently we'll hear from the opponent, there's a debate going on in county government as to funding. But I think, as I read this bill, it's to put the policy in place, so if the funding happens, they can proceed.
Yes, so this is in fact a framework, just as Chair Pinsky was stating, and we do have capital budget coming out tomorrow, but our operating budget being presented to the council on April 18th. And there will, in fact, the county executive is pledging support for this fund, and we hope that the council will not cut it from our budget.
Okay, thank you.
Had a question for council about whether there was a Howard County delegation letter, which I believe there is, and the vote at the delegation level.
And double check to see if I've received it.
was going to say, I do believe that it was
Yeah,
9.
I just found it myself. So there is a Howard County delegation.
House delegation?
Sorry,
House delegation.
we work together. Yeah, we're small enough to meet together. And we had one excused, one nay, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10
10
yeses.
yeses.
10-1.
One.
Let's go to the opposition. Councilmember Young.
I'm watching that clock. Good afternoon. I am here today in opposition to HB 0878, which will create a housing trust fund for Howard County. I am a Howard County Council member representing District 4, which includes a large portion of Columbia. While I am in full support of affordable housing and funding that effort, I testified at the Howard County delegation's public hearing that the bill as written would be a violation of the Home Rule Amendment of our county charter, which expressly grants charter counties authority to provide for the financing of housing and housing projects. This is set out in Section 10-312 of the Local Government Article of Maryland Code. This bill pertains solely to the operations of a county government housing department responsible for, among other things, housing finance. The General Assembly cannot legislate by public local law for a charter county on a subject covered by the Express Powers Act cited above. The sponsor of this bill sought an opinion from the Office of the Maryland Attorney General, but that office failed to review the relevant provisions of the Express Powers Act. I urge you to consider the legal sufficiency of this bill and the role that the General Assembly should play in exercising powers reserved for the county. Other jurisdictions have established housing trust funds through local legislation. Howard County Council members were informed in the summer of 2021 that legislation fulfilling the Housing Master Plan's recommendations for a housing trust fund would be forthcoming. There has been no legislation filed to date, and there is no authority impediment to creating such a fund locally. This bill creates a fund outside of the normal budget process and undermines good governance. It is designed to circumvent the oversight role that the county council has over the annual budget. Moreover, at a recent legislative forum, council members were asked about their support for this bill, and 3 of our 5 members, including me, stated publicly that we would not fund it. I ask that you vote against this bill and allow Howard County to file local legislation that will provide a mechanism for delivering stable housing for families, continuing Jim Rouse's vision of an economically diverse community.
For Councilwoman Young. Seeing none, thank you for coming to Annapolis and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Sure, thank you. Okay, last 2 bills of the day. Local government, we have Tom Henry on behalf of Delegate Bodler. Regulation of amateur radio station antenna structures.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're doing the last one.
Good afternoon, Chair Pinsky, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. For the record, my name is Tom Henry. I'm an aide to Delegate Boatler, and also for the record, I am a FCC licensed amateur radio operator. I'm here today on the delegates' behalf to discuss House Bill 331, Local Government Regulation of Amateur Radio Station Antenna Structures. This is the same bill that was in last year, 663, House Bill 663. There are no changes. This passed out of House committee and passed the House with no opposition for the 3rd year in a row. This bill will align our state, this line will align our state with U.S. Congress and FCC order prevailing in California, Colorado, Florida, Washington, Virginia, all passing the same bill. The FCC had ordered that the very least regulation necessary for the welfare of the community must be the aim of its regulations, so that such regulations will not impinge on the needs of amateur operators to engage in amateur communications. This bill establishes certain requirements that apply to a county or municipal ordinance regulating those station antenna structures, which are often unnecessarily regulated with zoning laws. But as a reminder of what Delegate Boatler shared last year, I remind you that an amateur radio operator shall be and must be trained and granted federal communication license by the U.S., the FCC, follow the Code of Federal Regulation, Part 97A of the FCC rules, also known as the Amateur Radio Service Rules, use authorized equipment and their own radio communication infrastructure, ready to assist emergency coordinators when called upon by the state, the county, the municipal, and federal agencies, and they help maintain whole community radio resiliency to pre-position at predetermined locations. Also providing situational awareness during severe weather events like what we have right now, hurricanes, tornadoes, flash flooding, winter events. They report to the first responders, National Weather Service via 9/11 of imminent danger and damage or other events that may require timely emergency communications to assist in saving property and lives. They have proven, amateur operators have proven the critical nature of their work in emergencies and time again, whether it be a weather emergency like a tornado or hurricane, or a disastrous event such as 9/11 with the New York Towers, Hurricane Isabel, earthquake in Maryland, 2013, the Boston Marathon bombing, 2016 and 2018, Ellicott City's flash flood, and August 20th and May 21st, 2021, tornadoes in Frederick County, southern Maryland, and Tropical Storm Isaias. So given the rules that they are subject to and the assistance that they provide at no expense to any government agency.
Yeah, Mr. Henry,
I'm sorry.
I think you had us at hello, so if you could,
I'm
if you
sorry.
could wrap it up, that'd be
Yeah, I
great.
only have one sentence. I'm sorry.
Okay, we've got a couple more things to do.
Gotcha. With that, I just hope that Maryland should join the other states in protecting that. And with that, I thank you and urge a favorable report. And I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. No questions. That concludes
All right,
the hearing.
thank you.
No opposition.
Thank you.
Finally, 535, Vice Chair. This is Washington Suburban Transit Commission, Prince George's, Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a local bill, a bi-county bill related to transportation. I think you probably have all experienced in your own jurisdiction, sometimes it can be hard to get our busy constituents to agree to serve on a voluntary board or commission. Right now, there are term limits when it comes to our Transportation Commission, the Washington Suburban Transit Commission, and one of the key parts of their jobs is to help nominate, select people for the WMATA board, the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority Board. So currently, 2 of the members of this commission are appointed by the Montgomery County Executive, 2 are appointed by the Prince George's County Executive, 2 by the Governor, and 2 by the Secretary of the Department of Transportation. And so the concept is they are currently limited to 2 4-year appointments, and this bill just proposes to lift the term limit question for the Montgomery and Prince George's members so that we can make sure that we've got some stability, good folks who are engaged and experienced and all that. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions. It passed the House 128-1 and passed ENT unanimously. So happy to take questions on this local bill.
Who was that one?
I have the answer to that, Mr. Chair.
Not interested. Seeing no questions, that concludes the hearing on that bill. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we go back across the street, I wanted to move a couple of lists of clean, cross-filed, unanimous bills to send a message that we're not just sitting on everything. So if we can move those, we need it in front of us. Again, we're going to do a couple lists of bills that are same as the cross-file that passed the committee unanimously and passed the floor unanimously. Do we have copies?
I guess they're running with just, bear with us for a minute. They're all identical.
All right, so while we're waiting.
And they're online if you really want to take a peek.
No, I'd like,
While we're waiting, we can say welcome back to Senator Simonaire and Senator Gallion. We missed you. Although we voted better without you a little bit, just saying. But we're glad that you're back and healthy. Senator Croza, Senator Riley had to hold down the fort. It was a big job.
She did a great job.
She did great.
Welcome back.
There you go.
COVID was your ticket out.
while we're being handed the lists, there's a concurrence. Ms. Foxworth.
So we have 4 concurrences before us. The first is on Senate Bill 654, which is a bill that alters the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Office of Outreach and Advocacy. So it's a technical amendment that the House performed, and this is in alignment with what we passed on the cross-file House Bill 279. Just strikes that unnecessary subtitle from the text of the bill.
Okay. Any objection to concurring? Seeing none, done. Next.
Motion to concur on Senate Bill 611, which is the Dental Board Disciplinary Revisions Bill. So this also is a technical change that amends the function paragraph.
Any objection? Seeing none, we concur.
Senate Bill 62, which is expanding the scope of the Board of Pharmacy to include prescribing and dispensing nicotine replacement therapy medications. That was on the floor today. It is in the same posture as that which we voted out of EHE and moved to the floor.
It's moved and seconded to concur. Any objection? Seeing none, done.
So on Senate Bill 37, which is establishing the licensing scheme for massage therapists. So as amended in the House, the $50,000 maximum penalty is retained. If you recall, we removed or reduced that penalty to $10,000 for a violation of the Act or of the Board of Massage Therapists provisions. And it states that.
Hold it. Whoa.
And under the bill, as passed out of EHE, the curriculum for massage therapists could have been approved by 3 entities, and now the curriculum can only be approved by an educational institution that's accredited by the United States Department of Education, so it pairs down those, the entity that can approve the curriculum.
So what is the final on the fine?
The final on the fine is $50,000 as amended in the House.
But we did 10,000.
Up to $50,000, that's right.
We had done 10,000, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
What's the will of the body?
There was pushback in the, I'm sorry.
Vice Chair?
There was pushback from our good friends on the other side of the aisle. They thought 50,000 was crazy high, and I thought our 10,000, that was what the Senate passed, seemed reasonable, up to 10,000. Up to 50,000 is what the House sent back.
What is it now?
Alexis?
So now it's 50,000. 50,000 is current law. Up to 50,000 is current law. So we amended it down to 10,000. They struck it back and retained the 50,000 max fine language. Senate Bill 37.
And on what type of things can they be fined?
So
Come on, let's listen, folks.
can be misrepresentation, it'll be practice without a license, it can be fraud. The scope is pretty wide, any type of neglect. Those are the sorts of things.
And these fines are set at ALJ,
ALJ.
Administrative Law Judge, or by the department, or what?
It's set by the Department of Health, the Board of Massage Therapy. They are the ones that impose it.
Did we say 25?
Let me, Senator Carrozza?
Maximum of 50,000, but I mean, I'm wondering if the reason it came back this way is that there could be certain situations where that you would want a 50,000 maximum. And so if there were certain situations that would fall into that category, I think I'm okay with the House version.
Yeah, obviously, there could be misrepresentation or fraud, so you're right, there could be some significant breaking of the law. Should I take that as a motion to concur, Senator Carrozza? Is there a second? It's moved and seconded. Anybody object to receding and adopting the House language? Seeing nothing, no opposition, we will concur with the House amendments.
Thank you.
You have one more, you're done?
One more.
Okay.
So Senate Bill 19 also expanded the scope of pharmacy to include maintenance injectable medications that were specifically for sexually transmitted infections. So the House bill authorizes the licensed pharmacist to do the same procedure, but instead of expanding the definition of maintenance injectable medication to include sexually or treatment for sexually transmitted infections, there's a new category, which is an injectable medication specifically for the treatment of STIs. So they are able to administer, quote, maintenance injectable medications for treatment of STIs. There is also an insurance provision that requires public and private insurance carriers to cover the provision of the maintenance injectable medication if they cover the same action for other licensed healthcare practitioners. And then there is a provision that requires the Board of Pharmacy to adopt conforming regulations for the injectable medications for sexually transmitted infections.
Senator Lamb, any thoughts on these amendments?
The version that we sent over? Or what's the,
So the version that we sent over, so currently there's a definition of maintenance injectable medication. We expanded upon that definition and said STIs fall under that definition.
Right.
And then this one is creating another category, but the authorization is the same. We didn't make any of these changes on our side. We didn't touch on the definition change, and we didn't touch on insurance at all.
Let's hold on this concurrence. Let's
Yeah.
give a little time to. You can look at it, Senator, and give us some advice on that. Okay, we have 3 lists, and again, these are clean cross files. We voted unanimously in committee, and they were voted unanimously on the floor. These are not messy cross files. They are not bills not cross-filed. So these are exactly what we voted in favor of earlier. So let's start, excuse me, let's start with list 37 as a consent, unless somebody wants to pull something off. Is there a motion? Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Okay, discussion on list number 37. Again, clean, unanimous cross-files. Seeing no red lights or any hands, that will be a consent in the committee and also sent to the floor that way. Let's go to number 39. And ladies and gentlemen, we're doing this. We're not moving everything and running around crazy, but I think we want to send a message to the House that we're not just sitting on bills. We're moving and showing some progress. We're not moving everything, but we want to at least let them know we're working on some of these bills. Okay, number 39, is there a motion?
Move favorable.
It's been moved, it's been seconded. Again, clean cross-file, unanimous in committee, unanimous on the floor. Anybody wish to be recorded in the negative, saying not, that will go to the floor as such. List number 41. And again, if you want to remove one, and you've changed your mind from your earlier vote, it's your prerogative. Okay, it's been moved, it's been seconded on list number 41. They are local, cross-file, clean alcohol bills. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Ms. Morton?
Just noting that there are 2 statewide bills on there, but they are still unanimous cross-files, identical.
I stand corrected. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Anybody wish to be recorded in the negative? Seeing not, we will send 41 to the floor as such. Okay, yeah. How long we're on the floor. I mean, if we're on a long time, they can prepare it and send it on.
Wait, not for tonight.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, we're not in a hurry anyway. I mean, these are not for presentment. You know, the Queen Anne County bill, I don't think we have to rush to get to the governor, so we can make sure he doesn't veto the Queen Anne County license application. So this'll come up tomorrow. Okay, that's all we have. Tomorrow, we may have a second session. We'll probably have some more voting to do. They might not all be clean cross files, but just we'll get them to you, a list, as soon as we can. That being said, we're adjourned. We'll see each other this evening at the Chart House? Chart House at 6 or very soon after. Okay, we're adjourned.